Welcome to the Business of Family, the podcast where we explore the stories, challenges, and opportunities of family businesses. I'm your host, Tammy Buss, and I'm a family business survivor, and I'm also a family business advisor. In this show, we'll be talking with family business leaders and experts to bring you insights and inspiration so you too can survive your family business journey. Whether you're a founder, a successor, a professional, or just curious about family business, this podcast is for you. So today on our show, we have Barbara Kephart, who is the Chief Project Officer from Projects Pivot. Welcome, Barbara.
Hi, thanks.
Hey, listen, so let's start off by defining what is a project for a small business.
Yeah, very good. Well, the definition of a project for a small business and a large business is actually the same. So a project, many people don't always know what is a project within their organization, what is not. So a project always has a start date and it has an end date, as well as it is giving you something unique within your organization. So you're getting something new out of it and it's temporary. That's because it has an end date. So many people get that confused between what is their day-to-day operations of their business.
Right.
The day-to-day operations of their business is something that continues. It's repetitive, and it's the same. It continues over and over again. So it's not anything different. However, regardless of what size business it is, something generally has to start as a project, and then it leads into operations.
Oh, right. So can you give us an example of something that would start as a project and then move into general operations?
Sure. I'll use a small business example. Many organizations have to send emails out to people. And so they usually start with a big old spreadsheet. That's the way my company started as well. Big old spreadsheet, all of the names are in there. Well, eventually they have to use something like a customer relationship management system or a CRM system or whatever they choose to use. That information has to get into the platform, the new platform that they're using. Many people within companies, especially in the small business realm, don't understand that that's actually a project. So they say, hey, you, go put all those in there and let's press go on this system.
Oh, right.
That actually is an official project. There's things that need to be done to set up that system in a way that actually works for what the company needs.
So is your company the company that, okay, we've now, bought a new CRM that would come in and actually input that data in there? Or how does that work?
There's what we call subject matter experts. So are there people out there who are experts in CRM systems, let's say, or any of the acronyms, ERPs, any of those things that you need within companies. So they're the experts. Sometimes someone who leads the project is also an expert, meaning that we have direct experience managing that. For example, my background is in electronic medical records implementations, and I do have a direct experience in that. However, somebody who is a really good project manager doesn't have to always have a direct area of experience in what they're implementing. But they do have to have technical knowledge. But the main thing that they need is they need to understand how to manage projects.
Right. So I'm thinking, from our perspective dealing with family businesses, that it's the preparation of succession, and a lot of times you need to upgrade or get the business ready with having your systems in place and all these processes in place. And how would you know that, you needed somebody to manage that project? Like, how would you know? Because, okay, we need a new CRM. Would you help or would you say, hey, we need a new CRM, we should hire or call someone who could manage this project and have them help us pick the system? Like, how does that work?
Really good question. Many people don't know if they need to do, let's call it an implementation.
Because I'm thinking I've implemented many CRMs over the years, and I never thought of it as a project to hire somebody to do it. So
it depends
walk me through that.
Right. It depends on a lot of different factors. It depends on size of the project. Like if we continue with the CRM example, number of contacts, the complexity of what it is that you want to implement. I myself am not a marketing expert. However, the subject matter expert would come in and assess the size of this.
So you would do that as the manager of this project. You would then find the experts to come in and help with that?
Right. Sometimes small businesses, though, have already done some of the research themselves. And so when we get there, we initially compile all of that information and we figure out what's been done and what still doesn't need to be done. And these are project management methodologies that we use, where we call it requirements gathering, you can call it whatever you want, essentially putting everything on the same page, getting everybody onto the same page. However, sometimes a small business may say, do we really need a CRM system? Or could we just potentially join together what we already have, or what we call integrate, and save us some money and maybe not do a full CRM implementation right now and perhaps hold off till next year? That's where a company like ourselves, who does project management, we also do something called, let's call it feasibility studies, or some sort of a discovery process to say, hey, is this worth your while? Is it worth for you to even start doing this project right now? And that really gives the owners of the companies and the founders and the executives a really solid understanding of what it is that they're looking at with this project. They may not have the budget that they thought that this was going to take once we do an assessment of the costs. They may not have the correct resources internally to be able to do it. The people who are coming in from the outside may be too expensive or unavailable for them. So these are all the things that we look at as part of, is this project actually feasible? Sometimes, though, some companies have already done that on their own. They are saying, yes, we are doing this, we are making sure we do it. We still have to go through an initial stage. I like to call it the pre-initiation stage of the project, where we make sure everybody's still agreeing that this is what we're doing. The common thing I hear is that people will plan in their budgets maybe 6 months in advance of what they're going to be doing in a part of a specific project. And then when they decide to actually implement it, a lot of time has passed. So during pre-initiation, we make sure we're all on the same page. We look at the requirements again. We make sure resources are available. We make sure the both internal team and the external resources are available. Then we can start. But the common thing that small businesses always do is start to them means turn the system on.
Right. Yeah.
Which gets you in trouble.
Right.
And the time that we do to, I call it slow down to move fast, in the beginning of a project during pre-initiation, as well as what we also call initiation, and it doesn't matter, these are the words we use in project management, just saying essentially about to start the project and starting the project.
Yeah.
Slowing down during that time makes the actual, when the project happens, go so much smoother.
Right, right.
And it's almost seamless many times.
So when you have, and we'll go back to the CRM, like you need an upgraded CRM that maybe integrates with different systems within your organization, regardless of the size. So a lot of CRMs have their own help desks. So do you use the help desks, or are you sort of taking, replacing the help desk? How does that work? Because I know the help desk sort of helps you implement it, but when we're talking about the go, is this like getting everything up and running, then flipping the switch from the old system to the new system? So
right. Yeah, once again, depends on the size of the project. For smaller size projects, yes, they let's say bring in a project manager, or sometimes, because at Projects Pivot, we not only, we can bring in someone from our team to come in and do this implementation. However, many times companies have people within their company that can do the implementation themselves. They just need some guidance from us. So we come in a limited, like on a fractional role during each week to guide them through the process. But the person you have internally is actually doing the majority of the project planning and implementation. You're helping them. So that's our training aspect that we do at Projects Pivot. So we not only have project professionals available on a fractional basis, as well as someone like myself who's Chief Project Officer. So we look at more the overall strategy of not only that project, but the other projects that are running throughout the company.
So is it more like an accountability? So when you come in, you're like, okay, we're going to implement this new CRM, and part of that is to get it online, to train the people on the system itself. And then to get the data in and to integrate it. So are you part of that, or is the internal people part of that and you're sort of helping keep them accountable?
Kind of both. So we're making sure that everybody's talking the same language. Commonly, especially with technical implementations, there's all kinds of different words that are being used and people don't understand it. So we're making sure we get everybody onto the same understanding of what it means to implement this project. So let's say the company uses somebody internally, and we're just coming in as the kind of external guide, or the looking at, it could be accountability. They need to be just as accountable as we are. So we have to make sure we're all understanding what needs to be done in this project. Now remember, we can't forget we have our subject matter experts. We can bring in subject matter experts. However, many times the vendor or the owner of the platform They have subject matter experts that you can hire on a temporary basis that come in and assist. Sometimes they call them their implementation team. Sometimes they are just in the help desk. It really depends on the size of what the company is looking at. Smaller size, using CRM again, implementations you may be able to do internally. However, you may need to do that initial maybe feasibility study in the beginning, or that kind of maybe talking with us just a little bit to say, is this the right thing to do right now? And that's where we fit into kind of more the chief project officer strategy side. Is this the right thing for us to be doing, the right project size for us to be doing now? Or does it make sense wait till next year when our audience has grown to X amount, and perhaps it's a better ROI at that point. So these are things that we fit into feasibility. But going back to when the project actually starts, if let's say the company has somebody internally who's leading the project, we might come in for an hour or two a week and work with them, yes, on accountability, but also making sure that all the pieces are falling into place. And in particular, helping them identify red flags. I like to say, let's make sure we get them yellow before they turn red. And so working with them with that. And sometimes it's also they just kind of need a pat on their back that they're doing a great job.
Okay, so it's not that you're coming in like every day, all day for like weeks on end.
Unless the company needs that. If the company does not have anybody internally, yes, they may choose, and I can help identify that. We do something called project management knowledge gap assessments, where we can assess their internal staff to see if they have a project management mindset.
So again, let's go back to the project, the basics of a project. So you say it's got a start date and an end date. So it's generally an implementation of some sort, right?
Many times, yes.
Can you give us some examples other than a CRM? I mean,
sure.
Maybe moving or, building a building or something is a project on its own.
Definitely. And people know those as project.
But
I'll give you another one that you don't think of. SOP, process creation. Many people don't think of that as a project.
True.
Now, if an organization does not have any SOPs in place, so SOP, standard operating procedures, or any sort of procedures in place, they just start writing them.
Right.
And in fact, that's actually more often than not, an actual full project. They could be, some organizations have 50 to 100 of them, depending on their regulatory requirements and their compliance. That actually does need to be scoped out as an actual project. There's a start date, there's an end date. Now, that doesn't mean that at the end we're never going to write SOPs again. There is going to be a process after we create, let's say the organization needs 50 SOPs.
Right.
Well, with that, they have to make sure they have the right resources to be able to do that internally. They have to make sure that they have somebody who can gather all of that process creation pieces that need to come together. Usually that is an internal person. They also have to have someone to actually write the SOPs. If they don't have anybody internally, there are SOP writers out there who can come in and do that. They have to make sure that all of what's written in there is fitting within their certain compliance requirements or within the company. Now, getting to the end of that, there is a point where the 50 SOPs are written.
Right.
However, there has to be something that's created to now transition that into the operational side of the fence.
Right.
It's no longer a project. We have our 50 SOPs. However, how are these SOPs going to be updated every year? Who's going to be updating them? How many more are we going to be adding over the next X amount of years? This gets put into something we call a transition to operations. And it doesn't have to be super complicated. It's just that we're stating we now have these 50 completed. We're moving it now over to operations. We no longer need our core team that we used to create the 50. However, from this point moving forward, this person is going to be responsible for identifying any new SOPs, doing the updates, and we also have to make sure there's backups to all of those people.
So what if you're going into a company who doesn't have anything written down? So they don't have any SOPs written down, and they realize that if they're going to transition this company to, the next generation or to a new person, they need to have these. And there's really nobody capable of doing them, or they would have had them in place.
Yeah.
So how do you go in? How do you even start a project like that when you might not know anything about the company itself? Yeah. So how does that work when there's nobody internally? I mean, there's people who have knowledge internally. Yeah. But how do you even start something like that?
You ask a lot of questions. So a good project manager, so for any of you who have people who are in your organization who are project managers or want to be project managers, if they're not asking a lot of questions, which I know can be annoying, but if they're not asking a lot of questions, and in particular they're not asking very good questions, that's when you might think, where do you fit as my project manager? Or do you need perhaps some training to get you to that point where you're starting asking questions? Because there's many reasons why we don't ask questions. We may be insecure. We may not be very confident in our abilities. We may not like being in the role that we're in. So going in, and if I were asked, if I had a client call me up and say, we need SOPs, we want to be able to transition the company to our, family member in the next 5 years, or we want to sell the company in the next 10 years. We first start with, let's get a lay of the land. What do you have? Where are the information holders in the company? Or I should say, who are the information holders in the company? And those are the ones that we need to start working with immediately to gather information out of their heads. And start pulling that on to something that looks like, okay, we can now bring it back to the owners of the company saying, here's where you're starting. Then we can say, the owner of the company might say, well, here's where we want to be. We want to have 120 SOPs created by end of fiscal. Then we can even look at something of creating a little bit of a gap analysis, which also, this all fits, of course, into our feasibility assessment that we go through to say, okay, here's where you are, here's where you want to be, here's all the things that need to be done, and here's the team that you're going to need. Now, if they don't have a team internally, this is where either they can go out and find their own SOP creating team. I do highly encourage them to make sure that that SOP team comes with a qualified project manager or a project lead or somebody who can really lead this project forward. Or they could still go find that team and use one of us to come lead the pieces that need to be done to be able to create this SOP process.
So you're not coming in as the expert on the items that they're doing. You're just leading the project and telling them who they need and what they need to find, whether it's internal or bringing in an external person to help. But you're sort of taking over this project and following it from start to finish.
Yes, and if they don't have anybody internally or they're struggling finding somebody externally, we can assist with that as well. We could help doing a vendor assessment. A very common mistake that also happens within projects is people pick a vendor. They pick one vendor and they say, this is the one we're going to use. And halfway through the project, they don't see eye to eye. The vendor leaves, or they don't want the vendor anymore. And now they've got themselves in a mess and the project has now gone double the cost.
Right. So this is a good way to take them out of the mess and say, look, we want you to go find us someone who can put in the right system, whether it be SOPs or CRMs or whatever. So you actually do that interviewing and you sort of bring back 2 or 3 for them to choose from.
Right. We don't play favorites. We select from all the different areas that are there. Because we are project managers that cover all industries, we many times may not know exactly who to go to. So it depends on what the requirements are that they're looking in the projects, and then we match that with the vendors that are out there. Sometimes they may have a favorite vendor. They may have someone that, our business colleague worked with this person, they love them. However, they may not be available.
Right.
Or their cost may be too high. So those are things we have to factor in. So we do, as part of that, we do look at a vendor assessment process. And that means that in our case, we would be doing the interviews and seeing what exactly the client is looking for, and then we present that back to the client. We do always encourage, though, that someone on the client side is assisting with that to make sure that we're staying within what the client is actually looking for. Once again, all that fits in with the feasibility. So just to clarify, because I know there's a lot of words being thrown out here, is the beginning of a project, before a project starts. If somebody doesn't always know what it is they need done, I do like to recommend that let's do this discovery process or a feasibility right in the beginning to say, okay, do you really need this? Do you really need this now? What is this really going to cost? And how much of my employees' time is this going to take to get this done? So that's number one. Number two, a client comes in and says, number two scenario, a client comes in and says, we know we're doing this. We need to do it. We've been wanting to do it a long time. It might be as simple as just coming in and working with us very limited to say, yeah, that looks great, or you need a little bit of this, and so coming in just on a limited basis. Or they might say, yes, we need to get this done, but we don't have anybody internally. Or can you help us see if we have anybody internally, because we don't know. Most people don't know how to figure out who's a good project manager or not. That's our area of expertise. That's all we do. And then lastly, when the project's over, right? We've identified it's a project. We identify the company wants to do it. We identify the company wants to do it. Now, when the project's over, that nice, clean transition to the day-to-day operations of the company. So whatever the organization has just spent money on.
Get in and out.
They want to make sure, and you want to make sure that it stays. So we're all about the sustainability of the project moving forward. So we're not all about I shouldn't say not just we, any good project management professional should not be about getting the project turned on. They should be about making sure that this project is going to be what the company needs at the end of the project, in 6 months, in a year, and in 5 years.
So do you have follow-ups then? So when you get hired on, or I guess the cost is, from a cost perspective, is it per project? Is it piecemeal? There's a cost for this, a cost for that, and then ongoing, we come in every 6 months and assess, or how does that work from a cost perspective?
Yeah, usually clients would prefer, and I do as well, to do a project by project basis. So we do scope out the project and we divide that per the month. So we go month by month. That way we make sure they're getting enough value, the right amount of value that they want for that month. Projects also do have sometimes have to stop or pause. And so that also helps the client to be able to say, you know what, actually this is a good starting point. The market has changed. We don't need this to finish implementing this project right now. Can we put it on the fence for maybe 3 months? And then we come back. We do end up with a lot of repeat customers because of that. Also, a good project manager can help you potentially pause or stop your projects for short periods of time, and then be able to pick them up when you're ready to actually get going again. Right. So most often our pricing is month by month.
Okay. And
based on project size.
Based on project size, yeah. Absolutely. So can you give us a success story, something that maybe for our listeners or people who are watching us to understand really, okay, here's a really good example of success, maybe that someone didn't anticipate, or what have you got for us? Yeah,
I work with a lot of family businesses and have a lot, but one that really warms my heart was a husband-wife company, and I didn't know it, but they really wanted to retire, and they didn't want to sell their entire company, but they wanted to sell their 4 main products that they had put all of their love into over, I think it was about a 20-year period of time. And what they brought me in was a global distribution strategy. So they wanted us to help create a global distribution strategy. Once again, I'm not the expert in global distribution strategy, so we had a subject matter expert. They had their own that we brought in, and we started to create this strategy. Out of this client, actually, they were a client from about 8 or 9 years ago. I created something because I was having trouble getting information out of the husband's head. And it was so highly creative. And the wife and I were great. We could get all kinds of information out of her, and we were able to start really figuring out how we could do the strategy, but he was more difficult. So we told him that we needed an hour or 2 of his time. We were going to put him in a chair, and we are going to put a scarf around his waist. And for 15 minutes at a time, we were going to extract information from his head.
Tie him to the chair so he can't move.
And then after every 15 minutes or so, he was a big athlete. He'd run around the building a few times, get his energy out, and sit back down. And it was quite successful. In fact, I use that to this day. I call it my seatbelt session, where we're trying to get information out of founders' heads. It took us about, usually, just a heads up so people are aware, it does take at least 9 months to a year to see changes in project management, changes within an organization, within the project management space. A year later, they end up selling their 4 products, and now they're happily sailing and doing all kinds of fun things in their retirement.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah,
that's nice.
Yeah.
I like that seatbelt session. That's a good idea, because you know what? A lot of founders are ADHD, right? There's a lot of creativity. The minds just don't shut off, right? Yeah. You've got all these ideas running through, and you can't sit them down, and it's very difficult to get that information out, and particularly with us dealing with how to prepare the family and the business for a succession or a transition. Right. It's very difficult to get that information out of their head, to know what they're thinking or why they've done what they've done, to get it, out to the family so that they can make some decisions. I'm thinking I might use that seatbelt. I might get one of those. We need one of those when they use it at the airport, where they click them and put it back, just snap them in place. Yeah, well, that's really good.
I did one with a client a couple of days ago, and it was virtual, and he actually took something that looked like a seatbelt that he had in his house, and he's like, "I'm ready." I'm like, "Okay, funny. This works great."
That's funny. So I think we're just about out of time today, but I did want to ask you, as I like to do at the end of whenever we have a chat, is to give me sort of 3 tips that you would give to any business, family business, any businesses dealing with project management.
Sure. In particular for family businesses, because there's so much communication going on between those family members, not just in their work life, but in their personal life. Really sit down with them and make sure, is project management something they need? sometimes companies may not have as many projects running through their company as they think. And so have a discussion first saying, is this a value, or do we have more of the operational side that we need help? I want to make sure that they have both the operational going strongly before we as project managers come in, because that's kind of, so really have that conversation of where are we? You could always talk to someone like myself, or there's other people in my space as well, excellent project managers out there who can help you come with that decision, but really have a conversation with the key folks to make sure that this is what you need. We can also, of course, help assess that, but starting, because we want everybody to be agreed that this is what they need moving forward, so we don't have conflict. Good project managers also are really good with communications and making sure that we're getting that communication flowing. Secondly, making sure that they know they're educating themselves around what is project management within their company. So if they don't have the education,
start date, end date. Right. That's what I'm going to remember now.
Exactly. Because what happens is if they don't have understand the value of bringing in really good project management or processes within the organization, you're not going to get buy-in across everybody.
Right.
Because it's going to go back to the same old. And so there's going to be the tendency to go back to the way things were.
Right.
And that's why we say that bringing out good project management practices within a small business takes about 9 months to a year. And then lastly, celebrating all the successes, even if they're small. It might mean that the company has just effectively brought out a new task tracking system. So they just know who's doing what and who's supposed to be doing it.
Right.
Or perhaps a version of that just for executives. So executives don't know what they're supposed to be doing every day. That may seem like a very small success. However, in the bigger overall picture of how they're getting their projects out the door, it's a huge success. So make sure you celebrate all of those tiny little wins.
Well, you know what? It is. It's a great way to motivate people. As you say, looking through the front window, you always see what's ahead of you, and this big, vast area. But when you look behind, you go, this is what we've come from. Look at how far we've gotten.
Right.
Yes, we still have a long way to go, but look at how far we've come.
Right.
Look what we've done. And I think we forget about that, is to say, you know what? Yes, we're not where we want to be at the end of this, but look at where we've come from.
Right.
And what we've accomplished. And that does make you feel good. And we've been doing that at our meetings for years and years, that we do a summary and we talk about, okay, what have we accomplished this last quarter? Or what have we accomplished? So you do have to celebrate those. And I think that motivates people, because we always say, oh, we didn't hit our target. We didn't do this. We didn't get that done. But when you look back and you go, but look what we got done.
Yep.
And then you come out feeling great, as opposed to, oh, gosh, here we go again, increased targets and we didn't hit them.
Right.
So anyway, thank you so much for coming in. This was really great. I understand a little bit more now about where project managers can help in any size of business. And now I'm thinking, man, we should have had you in before we implemented this system that we're using a fraction of. And
very common.
That's
what happens.
But anyway, so how can people reach out to you?
They can find us at projectspivot.com. That's our website. There's a contact form if they want to reach out, or you can email us at info@projectspivot.com.
Well, thank you very much for coming in today. I really enjoyed this chat.
Thanks, Tammy.
If you like this episode, subscribe to the Business of Family podcast on your favorite listening platform. You can also find BlueRoots on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. On the next show, I'll be back with another amazing guest who will inspire you with their family business insights. Until then, take care and keep it in the family. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered legal, tax, investment, or insurance advice. Before acting on any advice, please contact your personal or company advisors.